Hello, magical souls, and welcome to this. I'm not quite sure what to call it. Kind of workshopy training, just share basically, where I am taking you behind the scenes of my own personal writing process during the journey of writing Unbound, which was my second book, which actually came out in June 2018. So as I'm recording this, 8 years ago. And I was in process with this book 9 years ago, like pretty much throughout 2017, I was in the writing process of Unbound. And the reason I want to take you behind the scenes of that is it was such a pivotal experience for me. It was so transformational. It was very messy a lot of the time, and you'll get to see that or hear that, however you're engaging with this through that process. And it was the process that led me to kind of uncovering this approach to writing a book, Unbound writing. I didn't go into it with that intention, but it's something that came out of the process, like writing a book. Sorry, I've got hair in my face. Something that came through the writing of that book was like, oh, hang on, I don't need to do this in the more conventional way that I've tried before. Uh, the whole process of writing a book gets to be transformational in itself. And like for you, if you are in the process at the moment or feeling the call to write a book and feeling unclear, uncertain, if it is feeling messy, a bit all over the place, then hopefully this session or what I'm sharing here will give you like reassurance, but also my intention is through sharing my own process, it will spark off some ideas, some new clarity for you, certainly inspiration around like how you get to write your book in a way that feels you, that feels aligned for you, and also how the process of writing your book gets to like open the doors, like open the portal to whatever is next for you, because that is certainly what Unbound did for me. I often say it changed everything, and it did. I don't know, maybe it would have changed anyway, but I certainly feel the Unbound Press specifically came through the process of me writing Unbound. So I'm going to dive in a minute, but before I do that, I have pulled a card for us, as I like to do at the beginning of these sessions. And it is this one. It's from Tara Jackson. It's amazing embodied wisdom deck. It's a bit grubby. The guide book because I've used it so much. But the card that I've pulled for us is Essence. And let me read the message for this one because it feels very aligned with what I'm going to be sharing. So you have a unique essence that is only yours. This is what you came here to bring, to share, to embody. What are your qualities that others come to you for? What is the energy that you bring that's uniquely you? This is your life force, your essence, and this is your invitation to bring even more of it into the world. Yes, please. Amazing. So, that sets the tone for what I'm going to be sharing. And I have got some slides. If you're watching this, I'm going to be sharing my screen, and the slides, as ever, are mainly to keep me on track, but also if you're more visual, to give you something to kind of connect with. And if you're listening, that's perfect. You definitely don't need the slides. Like I said, it's just kind of to give me an idea of where we're going. There was something else that I wanted to say, um, but it's not coming. Oh, I know. And then at the end of the session, like if you are feeling that this is the time that you really want to say yes to your book, I will talk a little bit about the different ways, the different possibilities for working together. But let's dive in. Let me take you back. Share my screen. present. Here we go. So, behind the scenes of writing Unbound, and um, if you are seeing the slides, like this is a picture of me just before Unbound came out. I had a pre-launch celebration, and yeah, I just love that picture because it really was such an incredible time around, 2018 June when this book was coming out. And like this is the other thing I wanted to say. One of the reasons why I felt called to share this is I feel a very similar energy at the moment to the one I did when around the time that I was writing Unbound and when it was being released. And I can like see it and feel it in the women that I'm connected with as well and with my clients. So, I know that's not just personal to me. Yeah, a lot of these themes are spiraling around almost, a decade later. So I'd feel again that's why it's helpful to kind of reflect on this experience. Yes, it was an experience that's personal to me, but there's absolutely pieces here which I feel will be relevant and resonant with everybody. So you're most likely to like get something, receive something powerful from this session if I mean, if you're watching this, listening to this, I know you're a magical being, even if you don't feel it yourself. Um, so if you're already writing a book, or you're some kind of coach, healer, mentor, space holder who is feeling called to write a transformational book. Um, Women who want their book to become the foundation for the work they're doing in the world and the offerings they're sharing. Um, that's very much been the case for me. My books have become the foundation of all of my offerings and have led me, more deeply into what I'm meant to be doing. If you're a wayfinder, visionary, pioneer, trailblazer, that you're bringing through the new in some way. And again, you might not identify with those words, but if you're here, you definitely have those qualities within you. Or and women who struggle with writing their book in a conventional way. So, you're probably slightly rebellious at heart or very rebellious. Um, Possibly or likely kind of midlife, at that point of life where we reevaluate, midlife or later, where it's like, hang on, I'm not doing it like that anymore. I can't do it like that anymore. You might be neurodiverse in some way. So, you struggle with more conventional approaches. Might be perimenopause, menopausal, postmenopausal. You can't do the things in the way that, we've been taught, we've been conditioned, we've been trained to do them. It's like, no, it's kind of line in the sand. I need to do it in a way that feels aligned for me. Like if any of these things apply to you, then you're in the right place. So I've talked a little bit about this, but why I felt called to share this session, to show a real life example of unbound writing, because of course, this is the approach that I teach, that I hold space for. I talk about unbound writing all the time, but what does that actually mean? Um, my hope is that this will be inspiration to those who haven't started the writing process yet. Like you get to see a way forward through what I'm sharing, reassuring to those who are in it. Like if you feel like, oh my goodness, like this is not unfolding in the way I expected or the way, I was told that it would unfold. Or you've been struggling, like I said, with those more conventional, rigid, linear approaches, and judging yourself for that, making yourself wrong. I want you to know you're not, and you get to do it in a more unbound way. And like I said, these themes seem to be, or a lot of these things seem to be cycling around again. The world is at a very different place than it was back in like 2017, 2018, when I was writing and releasing Unbound. I mean, it felt, certainly at the time, it felt like, I mean, it was, we've been in this kind of cycle. Well, I guess we're always in a cycle of transformation that has ramped up since, particularly since 2020, everything we experienced then, the chaos that's happening in the world, disruption, things falling away very obviously, and like old systems crumbling, but like really trying to hang on, and that causing a lot of pain, a lot of violence. This is what we're living in right now. And actually, this approach where we kind of give ourselves over to our creative process, to what wants to come, is actually very well suited to these kind of times that we're living. Like these times, I believe, are calling for this more unbound approach to writing our books, because this is how we get to the truest essence of what you're here to share. Like we're done with, oh, I just need to kind of share some information. It's not just about education, like your book. It's about, well, the card at the beginning perfectly captured this, your essence, capturing your essence through your words, through the stories you share, through your voice on the pages of a book. That is what's needed now. So, before I started writing Unbound, um, the year before, so 2016, and I actually started writing Unbound right at the end of 2016, but kind of 2015, 2016 was the year of my first book, Heal You're in a Good Girl, which is actually 10 years old this year, this summer. It is. Um, so grateful for this book. And I'd felt the call. I knew that I wanted to write a book, and I'd known that for quite a few years. I mean, I'd known that since I was a little girl. I'd always wanted to be a writer. I love books, but I'd received the message of like, oh no, it's not for people like me. Um, that's not a path that was available to me. So I'd gone off on this completely different path. Um, done a business degree, worked in insurance, finance, and then in my mid 30s had made the decision to leave all that behind because I just couldn't do it anymore, retrain as a coach and hypnotherapist. And I made that decision back in 2009 and went on this journey, thought, I'll just set up a hypnotherapy practice and that will be it. But actually, that was just the beginning of the journey. Started blogging, and there was always this idea at the back of my head of like, oh, I could write a book. And certainly for a couple of years before I, really committed to writing that book, I was kind of dancing with the idea, half in, half out. And it was only when well, actually, there were a couple of reasons why I finally made that decision to say yes to Heal You're. I didn't know it was Heal You're in a Good Girl at the time. I had no idea really what that book would be. But things had, like in September 2015, things had completely dried up in my business. So it was like there was no money coming in or very little, getting no new clients. It was like, what on earth am I meant to do? Like everything stopped. And of course, there was a reason for that because I needed to listen and I hadn't been listening. And I ended up going for an angel card reading with the amazing Isabel Gatherer. Uh, Something I'd never done anything quite like that before, but I felt called. Like she lived at the time, she lived not too far away from me. So she'd put something up saying she was offering them. So I drove down to, I think it was Gosport, where she was living, sat in her living room, and the first thing that came through was, have you written your book yet? You need to write your book. And the angels were very adamant that that was what needed to happen. And that was kind of the nudge, the push that I needed. It's like, okay, like this has been bubbling for a while anyway. Things don't seem to be working, what I'm doing, so I'm just going to trust that and go with it. And Isabel said, one of the things she said was like, the support's there. You've got everything you need. And I very much, just looked at the advice out there about how to write a book, and pretty much followed that approach kind of in a much more traditional, conventional way than ended up happening with Unbound. The interesting thing is, I didn't really know, I wasn't really clear what that book was going to be. I mean, you can see some of my notes here if you're watching the slides, like I've shown some notes from my journal that I was writing in um at the beginning of that process, and it was very much based on me. Like I'm writing, who am I writing for? And it's like a woman in her mid 30s to 40s. She's dissatisfied, wondering whether this is it. She's always been a good girl. She lacks confidence and direction, but knows she could be, do, and have so much more. Something is holding her back. It feels like life is passing her by. Sometimes she gets really low and scared. She spends her lunchtimes in Waterstones, reading and looking for the answer, which is very much that had been the case for me before I decided to leave my job in finance and retrain. I used to go to Waterstones every single lunchtime and have a coffee and just read the self-help books or travel books and think, what am I going to do with my life? So, I very much started the process of Heal You're in a Good Girl with like, who am I writing for? Like, writing down ideas of what might be in the book. And within a couple of days of actually like committing to the process, saying yes, like making that energetic commitment, the title, Heal You're in a Good Girl, dropped in, which was amazing. Once I had that, it's like, okay, I can work with that. But I did approach it like I very much was kind of planning out what I wanted to include in that book. I knew the kind of themes that I wanted to talk about. Um, and I was like, I'm going to write a little bit every day. And I did most days. I'd seen something that Liz Gilbert had shared around how she wrote one of her books in like 30 minutes a day. And you might have seen me kind of share something around that. And that was like, "Ah, I can do that." So that's what I did, about 30 minutes most days, Monday to Fridays. I was writing. I had a book buddy, like someone who was writing her book at the same time. So we kind of paired up together to get accountability. And I'm really glad I had this experience of writing this first book in a more conventional way. Um, it gave me a really good grounding. And no, that's the way this book needed to come. And Heal You're in a Good Girl needed to come in order to clear the way for Unbound, because it was through that process that the idea of the Unbound self came. So that was like, where I was before writing Unbound. And as pretty much as soon as Heal You're in a Good Girl had been released, and I self-published Heal You're in a Good Girl. And to be honest, it felt like a bit of an anticlimax. I was like, oh, is that it? Because I thought everything would change with that first book. And it kind of didn't. Um, and very soon, I mean, it was amazing to have a book out there. And like, it blows my mind that, Heal You're in a Good Girl's been out there for 10 years this summer. And like, she's still out there making an impact and being bought and read. Like, that's the incredible thing about books. But very soon afterwards, I had the knowing that there was another book that wanted to come, like hot on its heels. And I was like, oh, come on. But I was here for it. I was like, maybe this is the way it is. And it can be. Very often, like our first book clears the way for what's next, which is like something deeper. That can be the case. It's what I've seen with a lot of my clients. So at the beginning of well, it wasn't the first page, and again, like, if you've seen the slides, you'll see that this is my notebook. Let me grab it. This is my So this is my notebook that I used to bring through Unbound, or a lot of it, certainly. I tend to have a dedicated notebook for each book, and I usually start with handwriting just what wants to come through. And that's what I did with Unbound. I sat down on, it was the Winter Solstice in 2016, and I was over in the States because um, in 2016, Mr. H and I had made the decision to move over to Rochester, New York. And I actually ended up moving over in the summer of 2017. He went over in 2016, and I was traveling backwards and forwards around that time. And so for Christmas and New Year 2016, I was in the States, I was in Rochester, and I took myself to a coffee shop and started writing Unbound. And I knew that that's what the book would be called. I knew that was very clear. That was about the only thing that was clear. It was big that it was going to be called Unbound, and it was like I knew that I would like be going on a journey. I knew that it wasn't likely to be clear exactly what the book was going to be at the beginning. It wasn't like, here you're in a good girl. Like once I had the title for that, it's like, okay, I can work with this. I kind of know what the book is going to look like. For Unbound, it was like, no, I just need to begin and see where it takes me. So I just started writing. And the first words in the notebook book are like, and so it begins. A journey for which I have no idea what the destination is, and all of the magnificent possibilities that holds. And, that was it. I was off. At the beginning of that writing process, I acknowledged that I'd kind of been playing at being unbound, and I probably still am, to be honest, because this is a continual process. It's never done, so there is always more unbinding to be done. Um, but the process of writing this book very much took me on a big unbinding journey. I didn't know where it would lead. It's evident in that first kind of first couple of sentences that I wrote. And in the next section, I wrote, I'm giving myself permission to just write and see what comes. So, that was kind of the way that I had been living, because when I started my business and, started working with different coaches or like looking at online trainings, and that was the, time of um, or certainly, yeah, it was around that time, the time of the teleseminar, um, that kind of thing, summits. And there was a lot of talk around, goal setting, manifesting, having a vision board, be really clear on what you want. Like that is the key. And I was always like, okay, I can do that, but it didn't seem to work for me. And in some ways it did, because actually one of the desires that I would like journal on and like do affirmations around was to, well, one was to write a book, to be like an author. One was to actually spend more time in the States, and that did come to fruition. But a lot of it was like, oh, like, how do I know what I want? Like, it felt like I was limiting myself almost by kind of writing it down. Um, or trying to kind of plan for that. It's like, yeah, but what if something else wants to come? So, and that felt very much like the essence of Unbound. It's like, okay, I could plan out what this book wants to be, but it feels like that's going to limit it. So I just want to kind of give it space and the freedom to let me know what it wants to be, to lead me where it wants to go. And at first, I thought it would be writing as a series of experiments around living unbound. And that's kind of what it was, but not in the not in the kind of like more simple way that I thought it would be. It's like, oh, okay, I know what these experiments will be, like experiments around like listening to my body, um, accepting my body, moving my body, like my relationship with time, unbinding from different stories, situations, relationships, how I use my voice. Like it would be this series of experiments, which it kind of, that is kind of what it was, but not in the way I expected. And one of the things I wrote was this excites and scares me because I do know where to start. And this was very much the starting point. I began to name themes like in my notebook. I wasn't trying to write like at the first few pages, I am just kind of writing in a more kind of conventional way. I'm quite impressed by how much like proper writing I did at the beginning, those first few pages. But then I just started to kind of name themes and just let myself be really free with it. One of the things I wrote was, I can't tell you anything, you know. And that's very much kind of, um, that's very much my kind of take on the reader, like whoever I'm writing for or whoever I'm like sharing something like this with. Like, I can't tell you. Like, there's nothing, like, what's best for you. You know what's right for you. And I'm never trying to say, like, oh, this is the way. Like, I can tell you about this unbound approach to writing, and some of it will resonate with you. Some of it probably won't. Some of it will be right for you. Some of it most likely won't, at different times in different ways. So, I'm always writing from this place of like, I'm going to share my experience and what I found, and you get to take what feels good for you and leave anything else. Actually, it's interesting because I look at that, I'd kind of forgotten that I'd written that when I was writing Unbound. And I'm remembering that when I came to, or when I felt called to write the Unbound 365 journal, or to create that journal, which came out, I think at the end of 2022 or 2023. Don't know, time's weird. That's one of the things. That's why I felt called to create a journal, just with a series of prompts, like daily prompts for 365 days. Because it's like the page is yours. Like, like write what feels true for you. Um, so that's interesting that that was there at the beginning of Unbound as well. Some of the writing, or maybe most of it that came through, when I look back, it feels like journaling. And this is something I hear from women often in their writing process. It's like, oh, well, this can't be right because it just feels like I'm journaling. But often that is where the magic is. Like expressing, like I was expressing what's arising for me on the page. I was just letting it through. Like, even if it felt like journaling, especially if it felt like journaling, it was going into that notebook. And that was my book, like notebook, my dedicated, so it's like, oh, maybe this is for the book, maybe it's not, but this is what's wanting to come. And actually, a lot of what did come through, which at the time felt like journaling, made its way into the book. So don't dismiss that. Like, that can be some of your most powerful writing. But certainly, even if it doesn't make its way into the book, it gets to clear the way for whatever is wanting to come. So, because I was giving myself permission to express what was coming up for me on the page, like this piece around the shadow, like started to come through, like I was acknowledging. I was doing what I guess I is one of the approaches I teach now, like bring it to the page. Like if there's something coming up for you, some fear, some doubt, like about how your words are going to be received, rather than like trying to push that away or ignore it, like we get to acknowledge it on the page, like bring it to the page, and that's a way of alchemizing the shadow. So, like I say, started it December 2016. I mean, I certainly wasn't writing every day with this one, but I knew I was in, like, I was very clearly in the process. I'd made a very committed, like, yes to this book. So even though I wasn't writing every day, I was in process, and I trusted that. I knew that. It came to about March 2017, And yeah, one of the things I wrote was like, oh, I thought I had it all figured out. I was like, it's all about the body. Like that's what I'm writing about. And that's, what a lot of my personal kind of journey was about at that time. Coming into connection with my body. Then when it got to May 2017, I wrote this piece around the unbound voice. And I think I ran a workshop around that at that time. And I thought, this is the thing. So, like, I want to normalize this. Like, in our writing process, we can get to a point going, oh, this is the piece. This is the thing that this book is about. Like, this is the thing. This is my thing. This is what I'm going to be sharing about from now on. And then, a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months later, it's like, oh no, this is the thing. That's okay. Around this time as well, I shared a journey um, about my left ear, which is just about a bit random. Like my left ear sticks out, my right ear doesn't. And it was interesting around this time because I had an experience where, and I talk about this in the book, like a national newspaper, the Daily Mail, was looking for women who had sticky out ears to be in a feature. And I was in a Facebook group where a journalist had kind of said, oh, we're looking for someone with sticky out ears. And I was like, oh, yeah, well, I've got one. I haven't got two. She was like, oh no, it's good. We had a chat. And she was like, I had to go up to London to do this photo shoot. And I'd always had a lot of shame around my left ear when I was younger because it like stuck out and, it wasn't symmetrical. And that this actually was a really big healing experience to kind of go to London, have this photo shoot and like show my left ear. But actually, it didn't end up making its way into the Daily Mail. It wasn't included in the story in the end because they wanted only women with two sticky out ears. I mean, how random is that? So I was rejected. But I love now that I've only got one. And kind of that led to a piece around like shadow work of the body, which again was like it's something I talk about in Unbound, but I thought at one point that might be the whole book. So I was just giving myself as I was having these experiences, like the piece around, following that call to be part of a story in the Daily Mail. I'm not a big fan of the Daily Mail, by the way, but it was like, oh, I'm going to go and have that experience. Like I trusted that and I wrote about it. So, there's something around like if when you've made the decision to write your book and you're in the process, like whatever is happening or a lot of what's happening, it's like, oh, is there something here for the book? And trusting that and, allowing yourself to write about it. And very soon after that, I started writing a piece about deep agreement, which is a practice that does make its way into the book. So, totally unrelated from really, well, it can be related to anything, but, it wasn't really connected with, the theme of the body, which I thought was going to be the focus of the book, or the unbound voice. It wasn't related to anything else that I've been writing about, but I gave myself permission to write about something different from the last time I came to the page. So that's what I was always doing. It's like, um, just allowing what wanted to come and following that, trusting it, even though it didn't make sense or it didn't feel like it made sense at the time. And then, I wrote this manifesto in my notebook um, about the unbound voice, which really, this is the work I'm doing now, but through writing. And I put, this is my vision to create a space where a woman feels safe to express herself, to experiment, to dare, to play, to try things out, to say the unsayable, to explore and to get to know herself. I want to hear you. I want to see you without the masks, without the shoulds, without the trying to say the right thing. I want to see you, the you that maybe you don't even know fully right now, because there are so many layers of stuff we get buried under. And then I go on. And like, this is really what I'm doing at the Unbound Press, what we're doing at the Unbound Press. So, this was coming through. Um, but at the time, it wasn't clear how this was going to manifest. That time, I thought it was it. This was it, and that this was the piece around um, physical shadow work, like the shadow work of the body, which ended up, which came through really that piece around my left ear. And I remember this was after I'd moved over to the States to Rochester. And during that summer, I would take myself out on writing dates. And I remember very clearly where I was like, this is it. Like this book is all about shadow work, but through the lens of the body, like those parts of us that we feel shame around, those parts of us that we try to hide, actually like learning to kind of bring those into the open, to acknowledge them and to celebrate them. Like that's what this book is about. Um, because, after the piece around the unbound voice, I was writing mainly about experiences I was having. So again, I was trusting like what was coming through. And then this piece around physical shadow work came through. And it ended up in the book, but only one section of the shadow chapter. So, I wasn't attached to it. At the time, I was like, oh my God, this is genius. And like, this is what all of my work is going to be about now. It wasn't. And that's okay. So we can like, one day we can think, this is it. This is everything. I'm changing everything to do this work now. And this is what I will be known for. And it might end up only being one small piece. Then there was just more scattered writing through the summer. And it's when I got to October 2017, it was a full moon. Um, and I was going back through everything that I'd written. So really, it was only at that point I took myself out. I can remember the cafe where I was, the coffee shop in Rochester, and I was looking back through everything I had. I hadn't until that point. I was just like bringing it through, not trying to make it make sense. But at that point, I thought, no, I'm going to have a look. And I actually wrote, like, I've written some good stuff here, and it was freaking good. And then I started to pull through like themes that I could see were coming through the book. So themes like obviously Unbound, talking about the bound self, which is really important, like the part of us that wants to be bound, body, deep agreement, um, the clarity myth, the woman who's always worked hard. Like some of these didn't even make their way into the book actually in the end. You need to go back and find these pieces of writing. So really good. Holding the paradox, you know, I started to bring together ideas for a structure, and that was 10 months in, which people would be surprised about because normally you would want to have a structure at the beginning, but the structure came through the writing. And this is what I talk about when I say, we don't wait for clarity, we write for it. And actually, it's not just writing it, we live it. We live our way into clarity because it's what you experience during the writing process that will give you so much clarity. I mean, there ended up being 5 principles of living unbound, but they weren't there obviously yet. And really at that time, as well, I was writing my way through some pretty challenging times because, one, I'd moved countries. So I'd moved over to the States. Mr. H had moved, almost a year before I actually moved out there more permanently. So we were navigating that of situation of being kind of back together because I'd been like, traveling backwards and forwards a bit. We'd been spending long times apart, and experiencing challenges in our relationship because of that. Like we really went through a process of reevaluation of like, do we really want to be together? And we decided we did, but it took some time to get to that. Both of my parents had serious health issues around that time. I was in this place of flux. So I was very much giving myself permission to write my way through it all. It's just like, well, I'm just going to write just for me. And if it ends up making its way into the book, amazing, but at least it will be supportive for me. So it's okay to do that. It's okay to write for you. So it was still a bit all over the place, even at that point, even though I could look back and go, yeah, I've written some good stuff and there are some great themes here. But then when I got to the beginning of November, so about a month on from that full moon, I saw that someone I knew, like a connection, um, someone I was connected with online. I didn't know her kind of in real life. But I saw that she had signed a publishing deal with this company called That Guy's House Publishing. And I was like, what is this? Because I had been thinking about, how I wanted to publish Unbound. And part of me was like, oh, maybe this one gets to go down the traditional route. I knew I didn't want to just self-publish. I didn't want to DIY the process. I'd had that experience with Heal You're in a Good Girl, and I'm glad I did. But I knew that I wanted something different for Unbound. I wanted to feel part of something. I didn't want to do it alone. So when I saw that it was Katie Brockhurst, author of Social Media for a New Age, had signed with That Guy's House, I was like, oh, let me find out more about what that is. I'd never heard of hybrid publishing before. But that is the model they were using at That Guy's House. Sean Patrick had started the company as a way to publish his own book initially, and then other people were like, oh, could you support me to help publish mine? And that's how why he set up That Guy's House. So this combination of like the freedom and flexibility of self-publishing with a lot of the support of traditional publishing, or often more support than you would get with a traditional publisher. But also, I was attracted to being part of this like community of authors as well. So I got in touch with them and ended up signing a publishing deal with them at the beginning of November 2017. And even though my mentor at the time, she's like, oh, I'm not sure, because it was quite new, That Guy's House. But I was like, no, I feel this is right for me. And pretty much as soon as I did, like making that commitment and knowing my book had a clear pathway, like into the world, like it knew, and I knew how it was going to happen. Like more of the structure started to drop in. So the principles of living unbound. And actually, like if you can see this page of my notebook here, um, they are they are pretty much all there, but there's some like things like freedom, power, magnificence, like they didn't make their way in directly, but cycles like cyclical living, pleasure, sisterhood, deep agreement, shadow integration, like the alchemy of shadow integration. Um, live your gift is the other one, which I guess comes through like power and magnificence. I did think that I might include some examples of unbound women. That didn't really end up happening. But what I ended up doing was like I could see how the book wanted to come together, and I knew what I had, and I wrote my way through what was missing. I was like, okay, I knew I wanted to include like challenges of living unbound. What can feel like challenging for us as we're on this journey, and also practices that would support us. So I kind of mapped out, like I've got the introduction, I've got the principles of living unbound, I've got the challenges, and I've got the practices. And the practices were things like divine discipline, sacred boundaries, conscious secret keeping. Um, yeah, some different ones. Actually, deep agreement is one of the practices that ends up being making its way into it. Conscious binding. So it wasn't all there at that point, but more structure landed. And what I ended up doing, I could write, like if I didn't have a piece related to that principle or that practice, it was like, okay, I needed to expand it. That's what I started to do. And more clarity continued to drop in. So the book was finished in the spring of 2018, and I delivered the manuscript to Sean at That Guy's House. We met up in London. When was it? About March. Was it March, April 2018? And he'd seen the manuscript. And that's when Sean said to me, he was like, after reading this, I can see you doing this with other women, and you would hold space for them to write their books, and you would have your own publishing imprint, and it would be called something like the Unbound Press. And when he said those words, like you've probably heard me say this before, I've just felt this sense of knowing in my body. It's like, this is what I'm meant to do. And, that's what lay ahead, even though had no idea like how that would happen. Unfortunately, got to partner with Sean and the team at that guy's house initially, so we could do that. But this allowing myself to go on that journey with Unbound, that like this is what it led to, the Unbound Press. So Unbound was published in June 2018, and if you're seeing the slides here, it's a picture of me at the book launch. It's a bit blurry, but had a gorgeous garden party. That's the only one of my books actually that I've actually ended up having an in-person book launch for, because Unbound Writing came out in October 2020, where I was over in the States, like no in-person kind of events were happening. Um, and the Abundant Author Playbook, which came out last year, 2025. I had like a celebratory lunch, but didn't really have a big launch. So yeah, it was so good to do that for Unbound. And what happened, because I kind of knew that the Unbound Press, that idea was there. Um, I remember sitting on my porch, because Unbound came out when I was back in the UK, and then I traveled back to the States. And yeah, I remember sitting on my porch in Rochester in the summer of 2018 and just having this idea to start a writing mastermind. I was like, oh, it'd be like really interesting to take a group of women on this journey of writing a book. It was a really intuitive decision. So I opened doors to that in August 2018, and very much, I just said like, would anyone like to join this writing mastermind that I'm going to run for 6 months? And when I was having conversations with the women who felt called to join, I was like, look, I'm not a book coach. I've never done this before, but I know I can hold space for transformation. And I've written a couple of my own books. So, you know, do you want to come? We'll have group writing sessions, we'll have coaching calls, I'll create trainings, and let's get your book written. And four magical women joined. Two of those became authors with us at the Unbound Press: Anna Sampson and Tara Jackson, who's like Oracle card deck I shared at the beginning. And Tara's written 5 books, published 5 books with us so far at the Unbound Press. So, how magical was that? Launched the Unbound Press in November 2018, and I had no idea how that would be received, if anyone would get it, if anyone would be interested, but that attracted our first authors very, very quickly. And that led me to write Unbound Writing, because it was through that process of writing Unbound that it's like, oh, like how powerful was that experience? Like a lot of the time when when I was going through it, it was like it just feels like a mess. Like I felt like I was writing about 5 different books. Like what on earth is going on? But actually, when I reflected back, it's like, oh no, there was something here. Like I trusted my process. I allowed what wanted to come. I wrote my way through. I brought it to the page. And I wrote myself into clarity, and I lived my book as I was writing it. And also those 5 principles of living unbound, like those are the 5 layers of unbound writing as well. So they were actually there for the writing process: pleasure, like writing in alignment with your cyclical nature, the alchemy of shadow integration, like through your writing, sisterhood, community, like it's a core aspect of the unbound writing approach and the Unbound Press. And living your gift, like each book gets to take you more deeply into your unique gifts. And through that process, leading to Unbound Writing, the Unbound Press, like 80 plus books have been birthed since, which just blows my mind. So, what helped? What are the things that helped through that process, which at times kind of felt very chaotic? Like having that dedicated notebook. I know it's really simple, but having this one place to just land everything, even if it felt like all over the place at times, like having one notebook, or it could be one document where you write is really, really helpful, can be really, really anchoring. Trusting, like trusting the unfolding, trusting yourself is key. I remember working with one of the first women actually I wrote with, I worked with to help write her book, and I was working with her one to one. And, fairly, when we were coming towards the end of our journey together, she was like, really, you know, yes, this is about writing a book, but it's about like cultivating self-trust. And really, that is a big element of the Unbound approach to writing. You get to trust the unfolding, which is not always easy. Giving myself permission to change my mind and write what wanted to come through, like 100% change my mind so many times. And, you've heard me speak about that times when I was like, yes, this is it. And then the next day it's like, oh no, actually that's something else. But I wasn't like, no, I thought I was going to write about this. So I'm just going to keep on doing that. I allowed myself to change my mind and follow what felt alive. And those are the kind of things that we can judge ourselves for. It's like, well, why can't I just stick to that thing that I thought it was going to be? It's like, no, like your book is guiding you. So you get to trust that. Mentorship. Like I had a mentor that I was working with throughout 2017, a one-to-one mentor. Um, and like that was so powerful. She was deeply intuitive. We did a lot of healing and transformation work. So that really supported the process of writing Unbound, like committing to publishing, like finding my publishing pathway and like stepping into that. That's what helped that, like the structure for the book to land. That was my experience. I think that's it. So that is the story. Writing Unbound. Hopefully, you've taken something like that, sparked something off for you. If it's only to have like your experience witnessed and or parts of it and go, oh, okay, I'm on the right track. Or if you're about to step into your writing process or into the next phase of your writing process, like knowing you get to do it in that way where you get to trust yourself, like and like allowing yourself to write your way into clarity. Like hopefully you've seen like what happens when we allow ourselves to do that. And each that's been the case for each of my books, certainly since. Um, in different ways. Unbound was like the purest expression of that, because I guess it had to be to kind of bring that approach through, to land that approach, like that, the knowing of that approach in my body. That's why I can hold space for other women to have the experience because I've been through it. And also now, by this point, I've like guided and held space for so many other women to have similar experiences for themselves. Like I know what's on the other side when we allow ourselves to do it this way. So if you are watching or listening to this and thinking, I really, I want to commit more fully to my book. I really want to like step more fully into this, into the author I am, and to go on this journey with my book. And if you want to be supported, if you want to have that mentorship in place to do that, there's a few different options when it comes to working with me or us and us at the Unbound Press. So one of them is to step into our author program. So we have 3 spots opening for that this month, where you get to go from wherever you are now, even if it's just feeling the call to write a book, through the writing process or the rest of your writing process if you've already started, and then through the publishing process, being supported by myself and the team at the Unbound Press. So that the author program runs for 12 months. You get direct hands-on support from me through the writing process, and then, like I said, from the team to take you through the publishing process. So 12 months for your book to be out in the world. The other option is the Unbound Book Incubator, which I'm running over the summer. So that's designed to help you write your way into deep clarity about what your book wants to be and actually create your first draft over the next 90 days. Those are the two main options at the moment. But what I'm inviting you to do, I mean, I will put the links to both of those below this. So, you know, if you want to step in, please do. Like the incubator's just starting. So if you want to step into that, now is the time. And if you want to step into the author program, like I said, we have 3 spots opening this month. If you want to have a chat, first of all, like to explore options, if you're not quite sure what's right for you, because, you know, there are other ways as well, throwing a stone. um, yeah, I'd love to help you get clear on what is the best way forward for you. So I have put some time aside over the next couple of days where we get to have a chat. If you'd like to have a complimentary like wayfinder call with me just to tune into your next steps, then I'd be really, really happy to do that. So again, I'll put the link below this. You can click through. That's just for the next couple of days. So I'm recording this on Thursday. So that'll be Friday and next Monday. Those are the spots that I've opened up. And that's for you if like, you know, you're serious about wanting to step into some kind of support. And I can help you to figure out what would be best for you. But whatever you decide, I'm excited for what's ahead. I hope you found that helpful. Please do let me know what is sparked off for you. And if you've got any follow-up questions, I am totally here for that. But I will leave it there. And yeah, here's to writing in your own unique, unbound way. Lots of love.